Experience is going to be a little bit weird. It's going to be a little bit different. It's going to be a little bit odd. Just like the man we're honoring today. Marty was all of those things, guys. Marty Cook. Marty Cook. Mr. C. Mr. Cook. Cookie Boudet. He went by a whole lot of names, but he was loved by every one of them. My name was Louis Cheney. I met Marty at Madisonville Community College, 1981. First day of college, first class, first person to introduce themselves to me was Marty. Instantly, we were friends. We started talking about TV, we started talking about movies, we started talking about The Fall Guy. Fall Guy was a TV show in the 80s with Lee Majors playing the guy who was a stuntman turned bounty hunter. In the matter of 5 minutes of sitting here talking to Marty, for whatever reason, he had me singing with him before our English class started. We're both sitting there singing. Well, I'm not the kind to kiss and tell, but I've been seen with Farrah. Yeah, this is how my relationship with Marty started out. It wasn't going to be the last time he would influence me. He taught me to join the political science class. I do not like poli-sci. He said, hey Lou, we're taking a trip to D.C. You should do this. Guess what I did? I went to D.C. with Marty. But here's the thing about Marty. He would have made a lousy stuntman. I figured this out about him. You know why? A stuntman is invisible. If they show up and they do their job and they do it right, you never know they're there. If Marty showed up, you knew he was there, just who the guy was. So he would not have made it as a stuntman. But today, folks, what we're doing, we're celebrating him because Marty, I think, would have bumped the actor right out of the spotlight. He just said, I got this. I'm the star. Because Marty was the life of the party and the foundation upon which many people were lifted up. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Marty's party. If we're not up here laughing and smiling, I've got him coming over kicking me in the butt. I just see it in my head, all right? Now, I cannot take credit for calling it Marty's party. Nope. That credit belongs to somebody else. His sister, Doris Ann. We were talking, and she said, this is Marty's party. I said, you're right. Then she told me something else. I don't know if you guys know this or not, but both of them had a great interest in Chippendales. Not those guys. But I'll let her finish telling the story. We are also party favors today, folks. We are not guests. We are not speakers. We are human party favors here to celebrate Marty. And our first one up will be Doris Ann.
All right, y'all bear with me. I'm not right on a regular basis. You notice I didn't say normal. None of us are normal in this family. I guess the way to start this is that I was sending a message to Thomas to make a request of me. And in order to make this request, I had to give him a little backstory. I said, if you could do me the favor of doing this. I said, not many people get our take on life. They don't get our sense of humor. But if you could kindly put my brother in an empty lard bucket or a Kentucky Fried Chicken bucket, that would make me feel good. So, in order to explain that, I have to give you a few stories that Lou asked me to explain that. I knew early on that Marty was too smart for my good. I was a live-in experiment. Then it quickly progressed to, I wanted you to go out in the yard like a puppy. And that's where the adventures began. My life quickly turned from being driven around in the wagon and overturned to growing up and, here, sister, try these. They taste like candy. Or they taste like bubble gum. And quickly finding out that, in fact, they were pepper seeds. Or, you hold the jar, sister. I'll chase the bees in. I'm allergic to bees. My brother taught me many things. Some good, some a little sketchy. The summer of '73 seemed to be a pivotal point in our lives. That seems to be the one that sticks out as the, like the Cherry Jack song, Seasons in the Sun, sticks out the most in my life. Marty taught me to ride my bicycle without training wheels. We lived with a huge hill in back. At the end of this hill, there was a very, very large white oak. He told me to aim for that white oak. Now, at the back of that white oak, there was a gully, a drop-off. Marty says, aim for the tree, sister. Right before you get to that tree, I want you to jump off. Okay, I got it. We practiced. Whatever Marty said, I did. He was a ringleader. We were so proud. I'd jump on and pedal, get towards that tree, jump off, because Marty said to. When we had it down pat, we were ready. He goes in to get the parents. We're going to show them what we've done. Okay, I'm going to go get them. When they come out the door, you take off. And remember, right before the tree, jump off. Okay, got it. They come out the door, I take off and I'm pedaling as hard as my little legs will go. I'm so proud. Right before that tree, I jump off. Mission accomplished. We did it. And then I hear from top of the hill, screeching. And I turn and I look, and Mother is wailing on my brother. She is beating the daylights out of him. We're proud. He's taught little sister something. We're proud. Sheer drop off behind the tree. Just one of many. Whatever Marty said, I did it. Because he was my go-to. Always. We spent a lot of time in Crofton with my grandparents. Happy place. I was maybe 2 years old, and we were there for the weekend, and into everything. And Mama, who would not have harmed a fly. Darsan, if you don't stop, I will spank you. Broke me. I'm completely broken. Crying, heartbroken, I run, of course. Marty. What's wrong, sister? What's wrong? Mama, thank you. Mama spanked you? So he takes me by the hand, leads me back in the kitchen. Mama, did you spank Tarzan? No. She has to explain. But of course, I'm heartbroken, and my first thought, as always, I run to Marty. My security, my anchor, my safe place. This is how our lives progressed. We grew up during the Disney years. The Little Rascals, our gang. As I said, we spent a lot of time in Crofton with our grandparents and our cousins. Several of whom are here. Tommy and Kevin, Amy, who he insisted on calling Ralph. He never could call her by her name. It was always Ralph. Her sister LaDonna was always Pumpkin. We romped and rolled, had the grandest adventures. Marty was always rescuing one or another. Amy would get up in the tree and have to rescue Ralph. Ralph, what have you done now? Have to go up and get her. He loved, and he made everything all right. And it was fun. We had our seasons in the sun. Our Disney years, like Chip and Dale. We watched Chip and Dale with Donald Duck, and it was our thing, our absolute favorite. Because Chip and Dale would look at each other, and one or the other would say, apple core. And the other would say, nothing more. The other would look back and say, who's your friend? And the other would look back and say, you are. Marty has always been my apple core. So our Chip and Dale, not exactly what you think. My best friend. We grew up, we went our way, and that was okay because we were safe. We were secure in the knowledge that we had each other. We had our families. He had 3 beautiful children and their children, his grandchildren. I had 3 beautiful girls, their children. We touched base often. We didn't call every day. That was okay because we were secure in what we had with each other. We didn't have to call constantly and know where the other was. Facebook has made that so easy. We commented, we liked, we looked. We knew where each other was. And that's okay because we knew. We circled back to apple core. Nothing more. Who's your friend?
Abbott and Costello, Laurel and Hardy, Cook and Jones. It's my understanding that Jeff Jones, who was assistant principal with Marty for 5 years, when the 2 of them got together, they became a comedy duo. Jeff said, we called each other brothers. I'm willing to bet they called each other a lot more than that, just knowing Marty. Principal John Wells told me, he said, you know, when I saw how these 2 guys acted with each other, I knew I was in the right place. This was my kind of place to be. When I was talking to Jeff, he told me, he said, Marty and I endlessly cajoled one another. Not picked on, not picked at, not teased, cajoled one another. So I realized then, okay, I'm talking to a principal. I went back to my high school days. I'm like, I've got to up my game if I'm going to do an intro for a man who has that kind of vocabulary. So here's what I've come up with. Let me throw in my announcer voice for you there, Joe, if I may. Here to expound on his observations and experiences with Marty, regaling us with anecdotal tales of hijinks and hilarity is our next human party favor. Please welcome Mr. Jeff Jones.
Of course, I picked the wrong time to get writer's block this week. And I told Mr. Cheney there are a lot of stories about Cook. Some you can tell, some you shouldn't tell, and some you can't tell. But that in a nutshell was Marty Cook. I know there's stories going to be plentiful today. I'm going to share a little bit of what he taught me. We gave each other a hard time all the time. We did good joke. And the office ladies would always say, "You two act just like brothers." And he would always end it by saying, "But Mom likes him best." So that was a constant. So Marty Cook was a person who lived life as if he was playing a role in a movie. He was all these characters rolled up into one. And he was really good at all the characters. Sometimes he was Andy Taylor. Sometimes he was Red Foreman. He was Barney Fife. He was also Walter, Donnie, and the Dude. And lately he was the Colonel. But he modeled things every day that we may not have even noticed. He showed up every single day. He gave all his heart and soul to all the tasks that he had to do. It was on the list. It got done. And the list was very important to him. He loved the Hopkins County Central High School, and he loved the kids at the school. He connected with the nerds, the short ones, the fat ones, the ugly ones, and the smelly ones. He loved the troubled ones, the weird ones, the ones in a family way, and the crazy ones. He gave them nicknames: Huggy Bear, Buckethead, Tapeworm, El Chapo. And those kids loved him back. And I've seen so many of them here today, and he would be touched by that. Mr. Cook loved his family. He regaled in telling the stories about their travels. Every Monday morning he'd come to the office, and it was the Cook Family Weekend Adventure story time. And he would just tell me about all these people I didn't know he was talking about, but he was excited about it. And he was so proud of his kids and their successes, and those grandbabies, they just melted him like butter. And I know they loved him back. So, what did I learn from Marty Cook? It's really simple. Be a character, have fun every day. Show up to work every single day and do your best. Love the less fortunate and help them out as much as you can. And love your family with all your heart. These are the things he was put on earth to do, and he did them extremely well. And it's really what we should all do. I will miss my colleague, my friend, and my brother. And I think it's safe to say, Mom really loved him best.
Zach Hibbs worked as a teacher with Marty. He was telling me a while ago that apparently at one point, he and Marty decided to go see Ron White. How many of you here watched Ron White's concerts? I thought I was in the right neighborhood for this. You know that routine where he talks about being drunk and being pulled over by the cops, and they tell him, "You have the right to remain silent"? And Ron says, "I have the right, but not the ability." Apparently, Marty had the right to go to this concert, and I'm going to let him finish about the ability portion. Please welcome Zach Hibbs.
And to be fair, there were probably only 20 people that were with us that witnessed it as well, so. Second. There is no image that can be burned into my head right now that would replace Marty Cook in full colonel dress, standing atop a mountain, looking over us right now, absolutely judging each and every one of us on how we celebrate him. So, Cook, I hope not to disappoint. Having been to so many of them with the man, this feels like graduation, minus the intense heat and smell. Cook would have to climb up the stairs to run off former non-graduate students that were flipping the bird over the podium atop the rail. So this is the only valedictorian speech I shall ever give. Images that flashed into my head when I heard of his passing. T-shirt over a dress shirt and a tie. Chris Farley impression. Successfully being the largest vegetarian this side of the Mississippi. Him in the movies, living on forever. Having a little bit too much pre-gaming before seeing Ron White and watching him face plant in the lobby. And after picking him up, he slept gently on my shoulder the entire concert. After it was over, the last applause happened and it woke him up. I said, "What'd you think?" He said, "It was good." Jimmy Valvano of the Jimmy V Foundation once said, "There are 3 things that we should do every day of our lives. Laugh every day. Think. Spend time in thought. Have your emotions move to tears through happiness or joy." Cook had about 90% of his encounters where people would laugh. The other 10% didn't know what the hell was going on, so it was hard to take him in, so they were constantly thinking, what was wrong with this deranged man? And like most days, I left his office or a conversation, I walked away with a feeling of such pride in knowing a man like him. I'll leave you with this. Cook would tell a story about pirates. In trying times or at the beginning of a school year, without great detail, I'll tell you. He would talk about the crew wearing red shirts so that the enemies could not see their blood. And then the punchline was them being so scared that they were going to need to have brown pants as well. So if you'll think about that later, you'll get it later. We don't have time to go over. But that never applied to him because that crazy SOB was not scared of anything. This showing only a percentage of his greatness. If you've ever seen the movie Big Fish, you would know that this is not the end of Marty Cook. This is the start of him living on forever in the words, pictures, and movies of his students. His legend will only grow. He led a master class for all of us on how to be a badass. Thank you.
From what I understand in talking to everybody, you all just tell me if I'm right on this. Marty should have had a tattoo that said sucker right across here. Because I was talking to Tandy about it. She said, here he is, a vegetarian. Every kid in school knew Marty was their mark when they were selling candy or anything else. Marty was going to be the one that was going to be buying that. He also had this soft underbelly because he enjoyed reading, he loved books. So Kim Hardesty comes along, starts working with him, and decides, I want to know more about him, get to be his friend, get to be with his family. So what did she do? I'll start a book club. Marty will show up to that. And that's exactly what she did because she knew that the way to his heart was through there. And she told me on the phone something that I think could be the title. If she were to write a book about Marty, the title of the book would be this, because what she said. Marty was the biggest frog in the puddle. Here to share some of his stories, please welcome Kim Hardesty.
When I transferred from North to Central, I felt like I'd come home. And Mr. Cook was a huge part of that. The little, the outcast, the lonely. He could spot it intuitively, and he embraced us all. He loved all people, but he had a special soft spot for the underdog. Mr. Cook called me Dr. Hardesty, always, and even visiting at home together. And I always referred to him as Mr. Cook. When I first met Tandy, She was setting up the hospitality room for an academic team competition because whatever the Cook kids were doing, the Cook parents were there to support. Mr. Cook jerked a thumb in her direction and told me in a stage whisper, "That's my ex-wife." I had never met Tandy, so I wondered at the time if this would be true. When our principal, Mr. Burrow, received some discouraging news about our school's performance, Mr. Cook described his mood as piss-offedness. Mr. Cook was not right. He was irreverent, self-deprecating, and generous. Generous beyond reason. Years ago, on a chilly March morning, Thomas and Mr. Cook built me an arbor. I can't remember now exactly how that came to be, but there they were. Thomas with post hole digger, and Mr. Cook working him like a mule. I grow gourds on that trellis, and each summer when they bloom, I'd send Mr. Cook a picture and thank him again for his gift. Sad that I can't do that this summer, but Thomas, I might send you a picture. He organized a lawn chair drill team for pep rallies. He played basketball against the Harlem Globetrotters. He invited special students and me on family trips. He blasted Alice Cooper's "School's Out for Summer" over the PA system, the final moments of every school year. If it benefited the school's morale, or the youth service center's finances, or just brightened another human's day, then he was up for it. I taught both Katie and Danny. Thomas was away at college when I arrived. These gals are something special. They're intelligent, kind, hardworking, well-mannered, friendly to all. Just lovely, remarkable young women. I wanted to spend more time with them all, as Lewis mentioned, Mr. Cook, Tandy, and the girls. So, along with Doug and Lisa Ramey, we started a book club. Whichever couple selected the book hosted the dinner where we talk about it. Those evenings spent laughing together are jewels in my memory. Mr. Cook was always the biggest frog in the puddle. He croaked the loudest and he had the most to say. We all loved him for it. We were drawn to his wit and warmth. Doug and Lisa had a young son when book club began, and each time we got together, the Cooks had a gift for Luke. They both got so much pleasure from seeing his delight. Of course, my entire family fell in love with the Cooks, as did the Rameys. Lisa Ramey said there was always laughter in the room when Marty was present. Doug adds, anyone who wanted to transform an old Ford Torino into a Starsky and Hutch car was more than all right with me. When Thomas and Laura married, they became part of the book club, and Oliver came to meetings, much like Luke had done. Whenever Mr. Cook would tell one of his self-deprecating tales, he'd write it off with, but you know I'm brain damaged. My husband, Randy, loved to tease him that he pulled that excuse like a gun. Departing each book club meeting, Mr. Cook would say, I love you all. We knew it came right from his heart. That's something he taught me. Don't wait for a special occasion to tell the folks you love just how you feel about them. With Mr. Cook's sense of fun, it should come as no surprise that when he became assistant principal, he coined his domain, the top floor, as the penthouse. In private, he referred to himself not as assistant principal, but as the Ass Prince. His car sports a license plate that reads, A. Prince. Now that's a moniker he got right. He was a prince among mere men, and we all knew it.
Thank you very much. Our next party favor is a former student who was had an ROTC scholarship, and he wanted to go to the UK. So what does he do? He calls up the admissions office, and he gets a hold of someone on the phone there, very proper woman. Now, when I spoke to him on the phone, he goes, "Now, Lewis, you might realize I'm country. Guys, I'm from St. Charles. I speak fluent good, old boy. It's all right." So I told him, I said, "That's fine. That's not a problem." He said, "Well, apparently for her it was. Because what happened was he had her on the phone, and just in normal conversation, he called her darling." If he comes up here and you notice his pants are a little bit saggy, that's the part she chewed off, he said. So he goes to Marty and he tells Marty about it. Marty goes, no, you can't do that in this world. You just can't do something like that. And I think Marty made it pretty clear to him that probably even Conway Twitty couldn't have gotten away with calling this lady darling. He also added another moniker to Marty. He called him Uncle Darrell. So please welcome nephew Jared Van Cleef.
We both come to the conclusion, I believe, that Homer must have been a damn Yankee that never did go back. He didn't appreciate Charm, Southern hospitality. Both perfect. Anyways, many stories with Uncle Darrell. I just had to find some kind of nickname that wasn't nobody else's. That's what stuck when I found his middle name was Darrell. That's what we went with. He was a good man. Picked the world up. One of the finest that South Hopkins ever produced, I would say. Probably one of the finest the world ever seen. Really not a whole lot, there's nothing bad anyone can say about it. It's all good. The biggest thing that I can remember about Uncle Darrell would have to be, I just like turned off,
We got you covered.
Nervous as a cat. But he was a good man in the fact of his the love he showed everybody and his characters.
I think this is Marty messing. Just my guess. I'm going out on a limb here. Going, you know what? Let's play with it a while.
He had him choked me. Thank you.
All right, let's try it. Hang on, we're going to do it this way. That's all right. I told you, I have a feeling. I'm not kidding. These things happen. Guys, I'm going to tell you something I've learned for a bunch of years working in TV, and it's now showing itself. Tech is a junkyard dog. It's just a matter of time before you're going to get bit with it. Guess who got bit today? That'd be you. You got a green shoulder. Go ahead.
Train of thought. Anyway, what I was saying, Uncle Darrell, it didn't matter your social status, or who your parents were, or how much money they had, color, creed, by what name you called God, it did not matter to him. Everybody was the same in his eyes. And that is something that I believe everyone in this auditorium will take home with them. And we need more Marty Cooks in this world because of how he treated people. There was no indifference in nothing. He loved everyone the same. And he showed it. He showed it very well. And as much as he did for other people and didn't even ask nothing in return, for me, I can't speak for everyone else, Thomas and stuff, having to do work and injured servitudes, things of that nature. He was good to me, as good as anybody's ever been to me. And he left a lasting impression on me for the past 18 years, I suppose. It's been a hell of a ride for him. And he's a good man, and I believe everyone has fondest memories of him. I just can't think of nothing else to say but thank you. Godspeed, I'm sure you would like that. So, here's to you, Uncle. Have a good farewell. Enjoy your party.
You know, he talked about Marty's love. And talking to Tandy the other night, she was telling me, if you guys have ever seen, I've seen this myself, if you ever saw Marty and Tandy together, just pure love. I look at pictures of them on Facebook and I have to wipe the love off my screen. It just pours through the two of them. And I was talking to her about it. And she related to me how much Marty liked to do, like you said, you were his ex-wife. I heard the story earlier. Recently they met Robert Fuller because Marty was happy to tell everybody how much he loved Tandy. They met Robert Fuller, who was on the TV show Emergency back in the 70s. Marty didn't care who it was. This is my wife, Tandy. We've been married 36 years. And it feels like 36 minutes. Underwater. Now, what I just found out about that and talking to Jeff did some comedy. Marty might have been against cheating in school, but he sure didn't mind to plagiarize from Jeff, because apparently he stole that line. So I'm giving credit where it's due over there. But that just gives you an idea of when Marty loves you, he loves you differently. We talked about that, and he was just Marty. There's just no other word for it. There should be a definition in the dictionary somewhere to try to explain exactly what that is. I think the reason the kids connected with him so much, though, he was one of them. Marty's a kid at heart. He is the class clown that got to be the assistant principal. And if you look at the pictures of him up here when he's in that role, you can go ahead and just cue ZZ Top, because he was a sharp-dressed man. There's a reason for that. That reason is he called her boss in 2001 to 2009. It was the Friday before spring break. All the kids coming into school are just jacked up like they had 5 pounds of sugar each for breakfast, all right? They're itching to get on their time and take off out of there. In comes Marty with a Hawaiian shirt and overalls, fanning the flames to his kids. Yeah, vacation, buddy. She looks up, she sees him. She goes, that's one of my staff. He was a counselor at the time. She pulls him aside and she goes, Mr. Cook? He goes, yes, boss? She said, never again. He said, yes, ma'am. Would you please welcome the boss, Suzanne Wolford.
Marty, this is your fault, but I'm going to get through it. Like everybody else in this room, I always considered Marty to be special, not just in his outfits or his eccentric taste, but so special that a day like this would never come. I thought I would always be able to walk into his office amidst his wild memorabilia and his infamous leg lamp and hear him say, come on in, boss. And I thought there might even be a CD playing in the background, Paul Thorne. Because you know, Paul Thorne wrote Marty Cook's theme song. Of course, it's Marty Cook. Of course he has a theme song. Boss, he said to me one evening, well over a decade ago, I got a CD for you. You gotta listen to it. Of course, it was a bootleg copy of a Paul Thorne CD with a handwritten album cover that simply says, number 4, Cook's Theme. So I listened to that song, his song. It's actually entitled, I'm Still Here. I'm still here, the singer says, made it through another day. That's more than some can say. When I feel down, I don't shed a tear. I say, glory, hallelujah, thank you, Jesus, praise the Lord, I'm still here. Marty lived that song. He was thankful every day that he was still here. He never let an opportunity pass to live life fully and somehow make those around us want to appreciate life even more. After listening to his song very carefully, I realized that he, like the singer, had cheated death early in life, had faced trials and tribulations that made him the man he was, and he wasn't going to waste a single moment. Although Mr. Cook often said that I fired and rehired him several times, I would not have wanted anyone else in his place. I knew he cared for me and respected me and wanted me to succeed and to be happy. Those feelings were mutual. I respected him and his tenacity and his commitment. He was fiercely loyal. He was an encourager and a defender. When we faced adversity at school, yes, he told the red shirt, brown pants story, one of my favorites. But he also loved to say, Ms. Wolford, I love a good rebellion as long as it's not against us. And he was always willing to start one. He would come outside on rainy afternoons when I was doing bus duty and insist that he should do it too so that I wouldn't get wet. Sucking up to the boss? Of course. It was Marty. We loved it. I wasn't surprised to find this sign by my door one morning. You may not can see it, but it's the evolution of authority. And it ends with, as he said, my high heels. He was just concerned, he could be concerned for me as a lady, a little lady, one minute, and work hard to meet my expectations the next. And just for the record, the story of those multiple firings is slightly exaggerated. Mr. Cook encouraged us often by saying, let's make our own fun. And you can tell by the stories you've heard, he was very good at that. Like this one time, we were at a required meeting. It was boring. It was bad. I was really getting discouraged. Marty said, let's sit up front, boss. Let's pretend that that speaker is the most interesting man in the world. Let's ask so many questions that he'll think he's actually doing a good job. And so we did, and we sounded ridiculous, and we had a ball. And like the day he convinced me to let him put that Festivus pole in the front yard at school. You know, he said, Festivus for the rest of us, boss. Okay. Or the next year, when he gave me a taser for Christmas. You never know when you might need that, boss. Or when he gave the ACT with us on Saturday mornings. He had to play the straight man and read the instructions for 4 hours. But at the end of it, he would always say, if you have any problems with the administration of this test, you may contact ACT directly and give them my name, Chad Bergen. He had fun, but he truly loved Central. Central represented to him his purpose. At Central, as you've heard, he worked wonders. He saved kids and changed their lives. He made adults around him better people, and he continually sought to expand his own horizons. Because as his song says, he was still here. He was more naturally attuned to the hearts of those around him than anyone I know. He could tell when people were in pain or bursting with happy news they had to share. He could read people, and he never forgot a single detail of information shared with him. When he told me years ago he was going to my home state of Mississippi for vacation, I said, "Oh, that's great, Marty." He said, "Yes, boss, we're going to Clarksdale." I said, "Oh, no. You don't want to go to Clarksdale." I said, "I was born in Clarksdale. I got married in Clarksdale. There is nothing there. Go somewhere else. Don't go to Clarksdale." Of course, 2 months later, I got a text and a picture. He and his bride, as he always referred to Tandy when he talked to me, he and his bride posing for a picture outside St. Elizabeth's Catholic Church in Clarksdale, Mississippi, where Mike and I got married. The last time I talked to Marty was at graduation this year, and yes, it was a repeat of, "We're going to Mississippi on vacation." I said, "Well, if you have to go to Clarksdale, this time go to a restaurant called Rest Haven. They specialize in American, Italian, and Lebanese food." Now you know that's right up his alley, in the Mississippi Delta. On June 5th, I got a text, and yes, it was a picture of Tandy being served at Rest Haven in Clarksdale, Mississippi. When he loved you, he never forgot even the slightest detail. We have heard that Mr. Cook was perhaps a bit eccentric. His legacy, though, is not in his eccentricities. It's in his influence. He championed those who needed him the most, and he inspired those of us who might falter and forget that we too are lucky, and we are still here. Marty was so many things to so many people, but most of all, Marty was, as he would say, just good people, Miss Wolford, just good people. As his theme song says, Father Time is undefeated. Someday he's going to get us all. He knows my name and he's got my number. But until I get that call, I'm still here. So Father Time has called Marty, and now it's our turn. We're still here, and Marty's memory will live on and continue to inspire us. Rest well, my friend, and please look down on us and guide us to live our best lives in your honor.
Thank you very much. I feel like we're getting towards the end of this thing. We're now down to the sports section, like in the news. And I was talking to Ken Aiken about Marty and sports. Everybody who knew Marty knew you could talk to Marty about just about anything. He could talk to just about anybody on any topic and have a conversation with them, except sports. And this is where Ken Aiken, athletic director, he told me, he said, yeah, I'm going to take scores for Marty for ball games. It sounded like this. Yeah, we lost 8 points to 2 points at a baseball game. Or at a football game, yeah, we won 3 touchdowns to 2 touchdowns. I don't think he ever got vernacular quite right, but the one thing he did do that he did get right is he supported every athlete, anybody who dealt with him in the program of the school and of the Storm. And here to talk about that is Mr. Ken Aiken.
I can see him shaking that head now going, it's your turn. You can do this. Tandy, Thomas, Katie, Danny, grandchildren, he loved you. He was always talking about you in one way or another when he got the chance. And I can always remember when our Drive One for our schools came up, he was always excited. He wasn't excited about getting to drive a Mustang like some of these other people might be. He was excited because he said, guess what? You know who'll be there Saturday? Me and Oliver. And we're going to every little booth there is. And sure enough, there he was. And Oliver, I'm sure, was wired up for a while as he went to every booth there was. That was Mr. Cook. Just some stories to tell. Gee, there's a lot of them. He was just a person that would make you laugh. And he made you feel better by just walking up to you and being in your presence. You felt that comfort. You felt that, you know, I'm here. I'll share with you. You can just share with me. This year, one of them, just a few of them though, this year about 7:15, I have open gym in the school in about October. I'm standing down there on the basketball floor watching all the other people go around. And I happen, if you've been in our gym, you got an upper floor, and I look up and I see on the track, and I see this guy in a white suit carrying a KFC bucket. And I'm like, oh my gosh, did I just see that? Colonel Sanders is really alive, and he's in Hopkins County Central's gym. And I don't know how he kept that white suit clean, because I would have had a disaster in it in 5 minutes, but he kept it clean all day. I know that for that day he was there. Second one, he'd always get on the microphone and about 7:20, he used to have to about once a week, and he'd say, he had it down pat, and I don't know how he said it. He said, attention, all students, no backpacks, blah, 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 blah. They go like that. And I always told him I was expecting to hear, and some of y'all that are older, you can get this, some of you younger, you won't. Attention, Kmart shoppers. In aisle 8, the blue light special. Yeah, that was him. And he could just make you, he was telling you what to do, but he could make you enjoy it. And that's one of the special things that he did for our students. And some people didn't understand sometimes when he was doing that. But he would discipline our students, but he would make them understand and enjoy, not feel degraded in the way that they were disciplined. This year, how many of you, some of you remember the old playground cruel song that you used to sing to your kids? You ain't got no alibi, you ugly, hey, hey, you ugly. Well, I'm sitting outside my office one day, and Mr. Cook's office is right next to mine, and there's students going down the hallway, and the tardy bell rings, and I hear him start, you ain't got no alibi. And I'm like, oh boy, where's this one going? I can see calls to Miss Ashby coming up right now. And then he proceeds to go, you ain't got no alibi, you tardy, hey, you tardy. That was the best example of Mr. Cook. The kids, all they could do was laugh and take their punishment or their attention for whatever they were that they were tardy. But as they were walking in that room and they were getting that attention, they were laughing. And that was Mr. Cook. He could bring the point to you, hey, you disappointed me by being tardy, but it's okay. You're going to take your punishment, you're going to do it, but it's okay. We'll go on to the next thing. And it's not something to dwell over. You know, a lot of us dwell over things that are bad that happened to us. Mr. Cook would go, all right, it happened. It's over. Let's move on with it. And that's why I think he would love this today, because that's what's happening. We had a great tragedy in our lives last Thursday. But we're moving on with it, and we're moving on with it in a way that he would love to see us move on with it. Those are some of the best examples I know that I can think of as we've had that, and he always went to deal with those things. There's two types of workers, if you think about them in the world. There's people who work to get a check, and there's people who love to work to help others who would work for free. Marty Cook was the second. He would have walked in that school at Hopkins County Central. He was sometimes there. Some people don't know it because his office was right next to mine. He would sometimes be there till 6, 7 o'clock at night, as Mr. Jones said, finishing his list of things that he had to do. He would take care of them because that was his school. And whatever had to be done, he was going to do it. He was going to make sure that it was going to make somebody's life at Hopkins County Central better. He would have worked for free. He was always helping. He was always planning. And you did not know when he would help in all the times. I don't forget, for some of you know, that when I couldn't drive for about a year, and I moved to live across the street, I was going to walk to school. He said, no. He said, you're not as young as you used to be, and somebody might hit you while you walk across that road. So every morning at 7 o'clock, he went out his way, and he was there to pick me up and take me across that street. And I cherished those little 3-minute conversations that we would have as we walked across that, as we drove across that drive. Ball games. He loved to tell stories like Lewis was talking about. He'd give me those scores. But Cook knew what was close to my heart when I became athletic director. He also ended them with ticket sales $750, concessions $600. He knew exactly which final line that I wanted to hear more than I wanted to hear the other ones. And then he would tell me cookout as he went through. But, and it was funny, as I went to a Red Book thing, this is just to give him a little credit, I went to a thing and the guy says, you know how you can tell somebody's stealing from your concessions? Your ticket sales should usually match your concessions. As Coach Oldham had already told him, Marty figured that out 15 years ago. He'd always say, hey, you ever notice these numbers match the same? And when that guy made that speech, I said, Marty Cook already figured that out. I want to finish with, I want to change his little sentence there. One of the things I want to tell, one last story, happened while we were down there in his satellite office last Monday, which if you don't know, that's Mr. Jones' office. Mr. Cook put up a sign that said Cook's satellite office since he spent so much time down there. we were down there and I was doing job interviews or coaches interviews on a Monday. And we walked in, and of course the upstairs was closed off because they were waxing it. And I've been known for the last 4 or 5 years to sneak upstairs when I'm not supposed to be up there. But this, and always Miss Huddleston and a couple others would always get mad at me. So I said this year I wasn't going to do it. So we're sitting there in there, and somebody came looking for me and they couldn't find me, and they asked the custodian, so he better not be upstairs. So Cook and Jones put on one last act there. They said, we're going to take care of it. Mr. Jones gets on the PA and he goes, Mr. Aiken, can you please come downstairs to my office? And here comes Miss Huddleston right around the corner. Mr. Cook was just cackling out laughing as she hit that wall. Basically, they both said, gotcha. That was what he was. He loved and he could always cherish, and he always made you laugh and he always made you feel better. There's a lot of times, like I said, just being in that office, I would just walk by that office, and this is one of the things I'm going to miss. It could always make me feel better, and he would sit there. He had his chair, and he'd be laid back, just like this. That chair. And I look at him and I'd say, man, are you practicing to go to the dentist? That's exactly what he looked like he was fixing to do. But I want to finish one way, and I want to change his little tardy. Hey, you ain't got no alibi, Mr. Cook. Hey, we love you, we miss you, and we will never forget you. Hey, Mr. Cook.
Steve Hudgens, the founder of Big Biting Pig Productions, puts out a casting call for one of their characters named Joe, and all they describe Joe as is a country bumpkin. Guess who's going to go try out for it? The outfit he wore that he got in trouble for, talking to Steve, he said, should have seen him. Walked in with his ratty baseball cap, had this work shirt on and said Joe on it. For Marty, I think it was less of acting than acting naturally. And apparently he exceeded at it because he shot right past it. Because I think what Steve was thinking was, we're looking for country? Not that country. But Marty won him over no matter. He still wound up being in movies of theirs. And I'm going to let him tell you the stories of Marty and his fame. Would you please welcome Steve Hudgens.
So yeah, I'm Steve Hudgens. I'm founded Big Biting Pig Productions, but I'm speaking today on behalf of myself and PJ Woodside, who's the other part of Big Biting Pig Productions. Marty meant a lot to both of us. He meant a lot to the entire Big Biting Pig family, which has gotten pretty big over the years. If you don't know about us, we have made 10 feature-length horror films. All shot in Hopkins County, Kentucky. And Marty was actually, he's instrumental to Big Biting Pig Productions. And I'm going to tell you exactly how. First, as a fan. He was a fan of our movies and some of the characters in particular in the movies. In our very first movie, Maniac on the Loose, I played a character named Ski Mask. Now, for those of you who don't know, Ski Mask is a real swell fella. Real nice guy. He's actually a sick, twisted, demented, vile creature. He's a serial killer who tortures people, and he'll break their thumbs and cut off their fingers. And if you ask him for a glass of water, he'll get you one. But first, he'll fill the water up and then lick the lid before giving it to you. Now Marty, and I'm not sure why, Marty loved Ski Mask. He absolutely loved Ski Mask. He always called me Ski Mask. not too long ago, I posted a picture of Ski Mask doing the licking of the glass bit. Marty commented underneath that picture, "That was the moment Ski Mask became my hero." He also referred to Ski Mask as his lord and master and his spirit animal. Again, I'm not sure why, but I love it. I love that. Marty was also one of the reasons we got one of our locations in several of our movies, Hopkins Central High School. Marty told us that if we ever needed to use the high school, we could, and Hopkins Central shows up either the exterior or the interior or a combination of both, shows up in 6 of our 10 movies. And lastly, Marty was an actor in several of our movies. Marty was a real good actor. If you don't know, he was a good actor. And when he was on set, when we knew we were going to shoot a scene with him in it, we knew that was going to be a fun day. He played roles in 7 of our 10 movies. He played a security guard in a mental institution. He played the principal of a haunted high school. He played the principal of a non-haunted high school. He played a sleepwalker, a mafia boss, and an angry lab supervisor. But my favorite part that Marty played was Lou in Hell is Full. Lou was the hospital janitor who on his breaks would take a drink from a flask, and he refuses to clean up pediatrics. Marty was comic relief in the movie. He did, I think he came to that audition hoping to get the Joe part. He got the Lou part, and he nailed it. Guys, he nailed that role. He was a little bit of comic relief, but he also was in one of the creepier scenes in that movie, where we follow him through the old, empty, creepy halls of the old Madisonville Hospital as he's being stalked by a zombie. My favorite line of pretty much any of our movies was Marty's character Lou in Hell is Full. And that line is infamous. The line is, "No, don't lick it!" I posted the "don't lick it" scene on my Facebook page. I just looked at it last night. It was 15 weeks ago. And Marty commented. He commented on that post. And I'm going to read to you the last line that he of that comment. And that line was, "Just know that 'don't lick it' will be written on my urn at my funeral." Well, in the spirit of that, I am going to ask all of you on the count of 3 to yell, "No, don't lick it." Okay? Marty, get a kick out of this. You're going to love this. So it's going to go 1, 2, 3, "No, don't lick it." And I want you to shout it. Don't be afraid how you look. Nobody cares. I want you to get nice and loud, project, show some energy. Okay? We're going to do this. This is going to happen. This is happening right now. You ready? Here we go. Here we go. 1, 2, 3.
No, don't lick it!
Yeah! Beautiful. Beautiful. Nice job, everybody. Love you, Marty. God bless you, buddy.
I remember that line. It's like when I saw that and saw him in the clip, I'm like, what I said before, that's not so much Marty acting as being Marty. And my God, when he did that scene, just looking at him going, that is the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life. right. I'm glad you brought that back up, Steve. That was an awesome moment for them. As was mentioned earlier, Marty had his satellite office because apparently he did not like to stay in his. So he stayed downstairs often with his comic partner. And that was near Principal John Wells' office. And he says that was kind of a good thing because Marty had a running clock counting down his days to retirement. And apparently he had a partner in that who was going to be going along with him. So anytime Mr. Wells got a little frustrated, overwhelmed with what's going on in school, he'd stick his head in the office in there, satellite office, and go, how much longer? With Marty. So Marty was his official timekeeper. We're here to talk about their times together. Please welcome Principal John Wells.
The other part of that, with the countdown timer was a gig at Jones. Jones would just shake his head because Marty would look at his phone and he'd say, well, we have 37 months, so-and-so days, so-and-so minutes. He'd say 14 seconds, 13. Well, 11. Jones would get aggravated with that, which was part of the fun. Made us both feel better. I'm down at the bottom of the list and never done anything like this. I think what I have conjured up here to say will be kind of a greatest hits of some of the things that you've heard earlier today. But I knew of Marty Cook for many years, being in the same district together. Never really got to speak with him very much until I came to Hopkins County Central a couple years ago. But as you heard earlier, when I saw me and Jones going back and forth with each other and gigging, it reminded me of some relationships that I'd had with friends at work over the years, and I knew it was going to be a good place. So we can all say that he was one of a kind, and I appreciated that about him very much. We talked about our hillbilly days, and I love to hunt and fish, and he would tell me about trapping and running his trap lines and hunting things from years gone by. If you think about that, since he was in the movies, he was into characters, I thought about, here's a guy who grows up hillbilly in Western Kentucky. He goes off to Washington, D.C. in politics and works on Capitol Hill for a while. Flipping the script, he becomes a coal miner. There's a picture of him up here, all thin, with his first paycheck from the mines, and he would say, I was married to a rock drill. So, we're going to make it? Yeah, I was married to a rock drill. I can do anything. Then he had, a dark patch there in the mid-'80s, and he turns his life in another direction. He becomes a different character. He becomes an education major, went on to be a teacher, a counselor, an assistant principal. Rolls up, as I first got my first glimpses of him, you see this crazy, goofy guy, as you heard, he's Colonel Sanders, he's going to Comic-Con, we talk about all the 60s and 70s celebrities that he's met. We talked about the Gran Torino and Starsky and Hutch and all that stuff. And then here's a 50-something-year-old man walking around with his fingernail painted. And I thought, what more? But that was his opportunity to get you to ask him about that, so he could tell you about people who needed help and who needed your thoughts and attention. What I liked about him is he knew what he was. He didn't care if you liked it. He did it anyway. So if you had a box that you wanted to put him in, like we do as human beings, well, that's this kind of person, or they're this, or she's that. You didn't have a box for him. And I think that was his genius. As Ms. Wolford said, what I saw of him, a dedicated man. He was always there until a lot of times late at night he would say, I'm going across the road. And then he was going home. But he was always there. If you needed somebody to go back, he was probably already there before you knew about it. dutiful and dedicated, and as you heard, he was always there at work, no matter what. He was loyal to his principles. I never got to sit down and talk with Ms. Wolford and Mr. Burrow and Mr. Snodgrass collectively, but I can tell you from what I saw, and then you heard Ms. Wolford say it, he was a loyal man. And everything he did was for the greater good for that school. He was dedicated to that school, he was dedicated to those students, and he'd never do anything to let anybody down. And contrary to what you might think, he was all business. If you saw the Colonel Sanders walking through the school carrying a bucket of chicken, if you sat in an interview with him, as a matter of fact, just this spring, I said, you know, Cook, if people could see you in an interview and how you conduct yourself, they'd have a totally different concept of you. He's all business, taking notes, very good questions, very thoughtful, extremely intelligent man. And he looked at me, he's like, yeah, I guess so. And then I said, well, we got to do something to keep our sanity, right? And he just kind of chuckled and said, yeah, that's right. So he kept playing that role out, but he was a whole lot more than that. And he was a servant, like I said, and you heard, he was a servant to the students of that school, and he cared about them, all of them, very much. So, what I had thought, you know, in kind of closing for me, you know, Cook was like all of us. We got fans and we got detractors. In our business, you have your success is based on the relationships you build with adolescents, and sometimes they're hard to deal with, hard to live with. If you think about the number of students I've heard post on social media, the students that have been here today, the students that I've heard make comments since his passing, I'm pretty sure that Marty Cook's going to leave a lot more fans than I will. He connected with those kids. His kindness will live on. He always showed people kindness. Just thinking about how he answered the phone every day. You know, of course it was up to 4 o'clock. 4 o'clock, I'd say, don't you answer the phone again. But this is Cook. How may I help you? All the time, looking for someone that he can help. And so, you know, he had fans for his actings, for his antics, but I'm his fan for the kindness he showed. You know, I'm very honored that I got to work with that man. Only 2 years, but he did leave an impression. My heroes in this life are people that live for something other than themselves. And to the Cook family, you already know, but as you've heard today, he lived for something other than himself. And he left a legacy as being a very admirable man. So you can take solace in that. And it's really all I have. I would like to say, kind of lighten that up just a little bit. And you heard someone mention, maybe it was his. I saw those pictures and I spoke to Tandy and I said, you know, I wish I had seen those pictures before of him being thin and all that from the days when he was eating meat. Somehow, like someone said, he missed the boat because he was a vegetarian, wouldn't touch meat. And he would always, we would be sitting there, I don't know how he got to do it. Always about right here, he would have a button undone. It didn't matter what shirt he had on, he could have a tie on any day, and even if it was something important. If I went into the satellite office to get myself a minute, Cook's, his release, stress relief was out there playing the part out, you know, in the hallways. I usually got a little bit of relaxation, a break sometimes in a visit to the satellite office, but I would just sit over and look, and here he is, faced off with Jones back and forth. And if I sit on the couch, I look, how do you get the same button undone? And you'd make that noise, button back up. An hour later, you see him, it's unbuttoned again. But definitely leaves a legacy. And not many of us, like I said, not many of us get to leave a mark like that with the students, because that's ultimately what it's all about. And if you were one of those people that looked at him and saw him being goofy and silly and wearing his flannel shirt on Flannel Fridays, or or some of the things that he did, if you saw that, it's kind of like the old smoke and mirrors thing. If that's what you were looking at, you missed it. And I think he did that just because he didn't want a lot of attention on the other things that he was doing. But he was a high character man, and he will be missed. Thank you.
What I find interesting is Marty played Colonel Sanders. And in this event, it was called Colonel Cook. If you look down here, Marty was indeed Kentucky Colonel. He and Tandy had 3 kids. They also, I'm assuming they went with you all a lot to the cons and stuff. You all been out to see some of these. Tandy was telling me a story the other night about when they were out, and Marty was dressed as Colonel Sanders. Thomas said to me, he said, you know what? He said, Lou, Dad would be loving all the attention he's getting right now. And I think you're right on that, because when he was out doing this Colonel Sanders thing, Tandy walks in with Marty. She knows he's going to dawdle. So she says, I'm going over here doing what I'm going to do. You catch up to me. Marty says, okay. So Tandy wanders off, does her thing, looks up. Marty's not there. She backtracks. He has managed to stop at this con. Underneath the sign it says, photo op. Tandy said by the time they got there was a line. For her to get to her husband, her and the kids had to get in line to get to Marty. Marty's just like, oh well, people like me. But I have to tell you, 3 kids, got Thomas and Catherine, and got Darlene. You 2 had it easy. You got the easy, quiet child rearing days, and you can thank your brother for this one. Here's why. When you were first born, your dad called me up and we were talking. He said, look, I got one to tell you. He said, this is my house. I'm not doing all that stuff people do with babies. No, it's not going to be quiet in my house. If I decide I want to listen to my music, I'm going to turn my music up. If I decide it's midnight and I want to watch TV and turn it up, I'm going to turn it up. He will just have to get used to how loud it is. He got used to it, all right. To the point Tandy had to bring a TV set into the bedroom and turn it on for him to sleep. This is in the 3-channel days, so what happens when they sign off about midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning? Shh, like the opening of Poltergeist, right? Thomas is sleeping to loud white noise. I think it's fair to say, brother, based on your outfit, you learn to love the word loud. Please welcome here to talk about his dad, Thomas Cook.
All right, before we get started, there's one small piece of business I'd like to get out of the way. Mr. Jones, if you would, meet me up here. Oh, it's still here. All right. So my dad really enjoyed Germania. He really enjoyed every Christmas was kind of our tradition. And one of the things he enjoyed most about it was the zigzag. Now, I can't tell you what it means. I don't know what it is. I just know that it's fun. And I'd like to do one more zigzag for him. So, all right, man. I don't know if it's legal.
We're going to, aren't we? All right, this is German toast. And it's ein Prosit der Gemütlichkeit. Gemütlichkeit means when you're with your friends, you just share your friends, and then you just have all your worries go away. All your troubles, all your stresses just melt away. And then at the end, there's a little setup for the pros. All right, ready?
I'm ready.
Ein Prosit der Gemütlichkeit. Ein Prosit der Gemütlichkeit. Prost.
A secret my dad has kept with him, because he did like to give me some credit every now and then, is that my dad actually, about 90% of that valedictorian speech, he helped me with. My first draft was atrocious. Basically, it was me going through and the idiocracies and like just words with lies I was saying wrong. Like instead of giving a man a fish, it was stupid. So he helped me out with it. And so in honor of him, I've done kind of a similar thing. So I'm going to start here and we'll see how it goes. Ernestine Brown. Imogene Martin. Hanson Martin. Dad was a much better fishing partner than me, but I was much better at finding turtles than him. Charlie Perkins. Danny Perkins. Noble Parker. Doris Cook. Leon Sullivan. Thanks for fixing the computer I put the pennies in. Bub. Won't be limits. It's not a bald spot, it's my cowlick. Cliff Norton. Senor Ortiz, Mr. Davis. George Evelyn. T.R. Simpson. Dolly Perkins. Rule King. I'm sorry that you're going to have to go out of business now. You don't have anybody buying a steady supply of your hats. All right, everybody, when we leave here, everybody stop by Rule King, pick up a hat. They have families to feed too, so you'd be doing a good service. Buy one of those hats. Herschel Boyd. Rocket. Tim Cantrell. Lewis. You ready for about 10,000 questions about how to fix up a Karina? Paul Thorne. Becky Ritz. Bob. I can't pronounce your last name, Bob. I'm so sorry. Okay? Bob. Nancy Old. Renee Zachary. Azabachi. My dad left about a 257-year-old horse that's been dying since I was in high school, and now I have to figure out how to bury it when it passes away, so thanks, Dad. Dr. Jury. Carla Chenoweth. A grown man doesn't wear short breeches. A grown man doesn't wear flip-flops. A grown man doesn't show another grown man an inappropriate video in the middle of a Chinese restaurant. Matt Pyle. Wibbly Wobbly Tiffany. Jimmy Carter. Margie Parker. Mary Lou Borland. Have I ever mentioned that he threw a hammer at me once? Roger Cotton. Suzanne Wolford. Kent Aiken. The Teen Outreach Program. Every one of you. All the crazy nicknames. Psycho, Ostrander, Ichabod, all of you. Same with Leo Club. JRTC, academic team, school counts, peer mediation. Special ops with the Red Bull Squadron. The members of, the names of those members have been redacted due to national security classifications, so I'm sorry I cannot divulge that. Justin, Cody, Jimmy. He enjoyed living out his rockstar fantasies with libido, that's spelled with a Y, in case any of you guys know if you're ever wondering, and wholeheartedly agreed that movies are cool. Jared Bangley. Let me paint a scenario for you. Car swerves, screeches to a halt. Pepperoni pizza, spit out on the road. I taste blood. Charles Gannon. Mr. and Miss Hardesty and the rest of the book club. I'm sorry that he allowed me in, and I'm sorry that I killed it for that amount of time. Mr. Ed Roberts. If a kid brings a turtle, you teach about turtles. Jim Bashir, and in that same vein, Elvis Presley. Chris Tolliver, John Grace, Don Martin. It was me. I did it. I called 911. It was an accident. Dad knew about it, but I'm pretty sure the statute of limitations is over, so let's just move on. Jerry Womack. He's really going to miss arguing with you on my Facebook. Rick Snodgrass. Tim Burrow. Have I ever mentioned that Dad made me walk in a broken leg one time? Jeff Jones, Ziggy Zaggy. Mike Sievert's Pharmacy and Liquor Store. Carol Huddleston. I'm fine. The fire pit would argue otherwise. John Wells. Steve Huggins, PJ Woodside, the rest of the Big Biting Pig family. Here's the deal. If he shows up as a ghost in a later film, he can't hold us responsible. I'm pretty sure that's a lawsuit. I'm a vegetarian. Does calamari have meat in it? Catherine Young, Kobe Young, Darlene Runkle, Jake Runkle, Laura Cook. Gab Tooth Bitch was just a term of endearment. Mom, I knew Dad didn't want to go axe throwing for Father's Day. I just didn't think he would take it this far. Oliver, Adeline, Izzy, my only regret is that he didn't get to drop you on your head. Didn't hit your head on low beams more often. Didn't feed you rocks, and that he didn't get to take your feet to the bike tracks. I'll blame his mother and his grandmother. Everyone in this room, every one of them. Because it's not about the rug, man. It's about what the rug ties together. And my dad really ties this room together. Now this time, I'm going to do something really silly, and if you haven't seen the Big Lebowski, you're not going to get it. That's okay. Dad did, and I think you'll appreciate that. Dad was a good principal and a good man. He was one of us. He was a man who loved the outdoors and being a principal. And as a piddler, he explored the woods of Barnsley, from the field to the slag pile and up to the bowl. He died like so many young men in his generation. He died before his time. In your wisdom, Lord, you took him. And as with so many bright, flowering young men at the Caisson, at Lang Dock, at Hill 364, these young men gave their lives. And with what we think may have been your dying wishes, we commit your final remains to the front seat of the minivan, which you loved so well. And I'm just going to pull this to the side real quick. I'm 32 years old. I'm a grown man. My father just passed away. The front seat of the minivan should rightly be mine. And I'm still regulated to the back. But I digress. Good night, sweet prince, and I love you, Dad.
Ooh, okay. You know, Marty was a big fan of science fiction. Before I tell you that, I gotta tell you this. Back when you were talking about your dad's accident and he was recovering, Marty had a cat named Shih Tzu. I knew him before his last name was Zoo. I knew him when his last name was Head. And the problem was Marty had named this cat that, and as he's having a lot of well-wishers come to visit him when he's recovering from his accident, one day the cat does something to Marty. Marty goes, "You little Shih Tzu!" And there's the name of your cat for Marty. Because he had to get it out in a way that didn't offend anybody. He was a huge fan of science fiction, particularly Ray Bradbury, and I want to share this with you, if I may. It is a quote from Ray Bradbury's book, Fahrenheit 451. "Everyone must leave something behind when he dies," my grandfather said. "A child, or a book, or a painting, or a house, or a wall built, or a pair of shoes made, or a garden planted. Something your hand touched some way, so your soul has somewhere to go when you die. And when people look at that tree or that flower you planted, you're there. It doesn't matter what you do, he said, as long as you change something from the way it was before you touched it into something that's like you after you take your hands away. The difference between the man who just cuts lawns and a real gardener is in the touching. The lawn cutter might just as well not have been there at all. The gardener will be there a lifetime. We are Marty's garden, folks. That's what we are. I mentioned earlier about the stuntman stuff and him getting to meet Lee Majors. He also met other celebrities, as you all know. He enjoyed meeting those, particularly who with the old Star Trek, the original. He got to meet the original Captain Kirk, William Shatner. But he never got to meet Leonard Nimoy. Leonard Nimoy passed away in 2015, who played Mr. Spock. In 2015, just before he died, Leonard Nimoy tweeted out, "A life is like a garden. Perfect moments can be had, but not preserved, except in memory." We've all got these memories of Marty that we cherish. And if we open this floor up right now and let everybody come down and talk, guys, we'd be here for days instead of World Guinness record. I'm not kidding. People would just pour down here and stand here for hours. These memories come with a lot of smiles and laughter and some tears. Marty would have preferred the smiles, hence why we are having Marty's party. And I have found a way to smile myself through this, the way that I think Marty would want me to. I learned about reframing. You know, when somebody cuts you off in traffic and your first instinct is to throw them a bird and scream at them, you go, no, no, no. Maybe they're on their way to the hospital because their wife is having their first child. When it comes to this, I've chosen to reframe it in a way I think Marty would appreciate. Cook to Enterprise. One, to beam up. Cookout.
Space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the starship Enterprise. Her ongoing mission, to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life forms and new civilizations, to boldly go where no one has gone before.